James and Heather Callahan looked like the perfect Florida couple. Sunshine smiles, backyard BBQs, 2 kids, and a life people envied. But behind those palm trees and poolside photos hid a secret so twisted it would turn their dream marriage into a nightmare. When James uncovered the truth about who his wife really was, love turned to fury, trust shattered into obsession, and paradise turned into a crime scene. What began as a picture-perfect family story ended in blood, betrayal, and a mystery that still haunts Clearwater to this day. The Crime Scene presents a new page of crime, a new mystery, a new shock case. James Callahan had everything a man could ask for: steady job, loving wife, 2 beautiful kids, and a house that screamed the American dream. Living in Clearwater, Florida, he was the kind of dad who grilled steaks on weekends, fixed the neighbor's fence without being asked, and showed up to every Little League game like it was the World Series. His wife, Heather, was the charm of the neighborhood, always dressed perfectly, flashing that sweet Southern smile that made everyone adore her. Together, they looked untouchable, the couple everyone secretly compared themselves to. But behind those palm trees and pool parties, something was off. James started noticing the little things first: late-night phone buzzes, text messages she'd flip her phone over for, and random trips to Target that lasted hours. He wanted to trust her, but the feeling in his gut wouldn't quit. He tried pushing it away, blaming his own paranoia, but the signs kept adding up. Heather had new jewelry he hadn't bought, credit card statements didn't match what she said she spent, and she'd been making calls from the backyard late at night when she thought he was asleep. The picture-perfect life started to look staged, like a movie set hiding right behind the walls. James loved his wife, but that love started to feel like a trap. He didn't know if he was losing his mind or if she was hiding something big. The whispers in his head told him he was being played, but by who? And why? In a place where the sun never seemed to stop shining, James was starting to see shadows everywhere. And soon enough, those shadows would lead him straight into a truth so dark it would burn down everything he thought was real. James couldn't shake the feeling that his wife was living a double life. So, one quiet afternoon, while Heather was out running errands, he started digging. Nothing crazy at first, just a peek at the bank app, a scroll through the shared laptop history. But the deeper he went, the weirder things got. Old mail tucked behind the kitchen drawer had a different name printed on it. Her birth date didn't match what she'd told him. Then came the kicker: a bank statement from an account he never knew existed, registered to someone named Heather L. Carson. James froze. His wife's maiden name wasn't Carson. Hell, she'd said she was from Georgia, but the mail traced back to Indiana. The more he searched, the more it all unraveled. Heather Callahan wasn't real. She'd built a whole new life from scratch. When James ran her real name through the internet, a chill ran through him. There it was, a news article from nearly 10 years ago. Local woman's husband found dead in suspicious accident. The woman in the blurry photo? Heather, with darker hair and a different name. The story said the case had gone cold. That night, James couldn't even look at her the same way. Every word she said felt rehearsed. Every touch felt calculated. He began replaying the last 5 years of their life together, searching for clues he'd missed. How did he not see it before? The soft smiles, the nervous glances when people asked about her past, the way she avoided old friends. He wasn't married to Heather Callahan. He was married to a ghost from someone else's story. And what scared him most wasn't what she'd done before. It was wondering how far she'd go to keep her secret buried this time. James tried to play it cool, pretending he hadn't found anything. He smiled at Heather, made dinner like always, even kissed her goodnight. But inside, his mind was spiraling. The woman he'd been sleeping next to for years was a stranger wearing his wife's face. He started following her every move, keeping track of her routines, the time she left the house, the route she took. One afternoon, he tailed her after she said she was meeting a friend for lunch. Instead, she drove 30 minutes out of town to a dusty, half-abandoned storage complex. She looked around nervously before unlocking one of the units. James waited until she left, then used the spare key he'd swiped from her drawer. Inside, his blood ran cold. The place was packed with boxes labeled under different names, stacks of IDs, passports, and piles of cash bundled in rubber bands. There were photos of Heather with different hairstyles, in different cities, with men he'd never seen. It was like stepping into the secret life of a stranger. He found an old marriage certificate with her real name and the dead husband's, proof of everything she'd hidden. That night, he barely spoke a word. Every laugh she forced, every smile she flashed felt like an act. His stomach churned as he realized he didn't even know who she was or what she was capable of. He began sleeping with one eye open, watching her breathe beside him, wondering if she'd ever done the same to someone else before. Every second in that house started to feel dangerous, every whisper of the wind like a warning. James wasn't sure if she was running from something, or if she was preparing to run again. But one thing was certain, he wasn't letting her vanish this time. That night, the air in Clearwater turned heavy. The Florida sky was bruised with thunderclouds, and rain hammered the roof like it was trying to wash away something wicked. James sat alone in the living room, staring at the flickering TV, but his mind was miles away. He'd reached the breaking point. For days, he'd been choking on the truth, pretending everything was fine while his world cracked open from the inside. When Heather walked in that night, soaked from the rain, something in her eyes told him she knew he'd found out. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. The house that once smelled like vanilla candles and kids' laughter now reeked of fear. Neighbors later said they heard muffled yelling, maybe a crash, maybe glass shattering. But in neighborhoods like theirs, people mind their business. No one checked. No one called. Inside, James finally let years of love, anger, and betrayal collide all at once. Every unanswered question, every sleepless night, every lie. He snapped. The storm outside seemed to mirror the chaos inside him. The power flickered, thunder roared, and when it all went silent, Heather was gone. Her phone sat shattered on the kitchen floor, next to a single gold earring. Rain washed down the driveway, streaking the pavement with something darker than water. Hours later, neighbors saw James' truck pull away, headlights cutting through the downpour. No one thought much of it at the time. It was Florida, after all, and people drove at odd hours. But by sunrise, the house was eerily quiet. The pool rippled under the morning light, the kids still asleep upstairs, unaware that their mother would never come back. What happened in that stormy night would soon become the town's darkest secret. For the next 2 days, James played the part of a worried husband. He told everyone Heather had gone to visit her sister in Tallahassee, even mentioned how she'd been acting off lately, needing some time to herself. Neighbors nodded, bought the story, and went on with their lives. But inside the Callahan home, everything felt off kilter. Heather's purse sat untouched on the counter, her clothes still in the closet, her phone dead and tucked behind a couch cushion like someone had tried to hide it. The kids kept asking when Mom was coming back, and James just forced a smile he didn't mean. He cooked dinner, packed lunches, mowed the lawn, trying to keep the illusion alive. But detectives always noticed cracks in the paint. When Heather's best friend filed a missing persons report, police started digging fast. At first, James was calm during questioning, confident he could bluff his way through. He talked about their perfect marriage, showed family photos, laughed when detectives asked strange questions. But they already had him on tape. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed James driving toward the marshlands off Route 19 at 2:12 a.m., the night of the storm. His truck came back an hour later, caked in mud. When police searched it, they found a bracelet with Heather's initials wedged under the passenger seat, and a faint stain on the floor mat that looked too dark to be coffee. The Florida sun might bleach the world bright, but it never hides what people try to bury. Soon, the story of the perfect Florida dad started cracking wide open. Neighbors stopped waving, reporters showed up, and whispers turned into headlines. Everyone thought they knew the Callahans, until they realized they didn't know them at all. When the police finally sat James down in that cold interrogation room, he looked calm, too calm. But the calm cracked fast once the questions started coming. The evidence stacked up quick: tire tracks in the swamp, Heather's jewelry in his truck, traces of her DNA on a shovel found near the back of his shed. Still, James didn't confess right away. He sat there, jaw tight, eyes red, until one detective mentioned something that made him flinch: the cash they found in the storage unit. That was the key. The money wasn't just some secret stash. It tied back to Heather's old life, one filled with lies, stolen identities, and dangerous people. Turns out, she'd been running for years from a criminal ring linked to her first husband's death. The man she'd been married to before James wasn't just a victim. He'd been involved in laundering money for some serious players, and Heather had been part of it, too. When things went bad, she faked her death, vanished, and built a new life in Florida. For years, it worked, until the people she'd crossed finally found her. That's who she'd been talking to late at night, the ones demanding their money back. She'd been desperate, hoarding cash, planning to disappear again. James never knew. When he confronted her, she broke down and told him everything. How their life together had been built on a lie. Something inside him snapped. Betrayal, fear, anger, it all mixed into one blinding moment of rage. He claimed he didn't mean to do it, that it happened fast, but it was too late. By the time the storm cleared, Heather was gone, and James was left with blood on his hands, staring at the woman he once thought he'd spend forever with. A month later, after endless searches through the swamps and canals, a team of divers found what was left of Heather. Her body was buried deep in a mangrove marsh, weighed down with cinder blocks, barely recognizable after weeks in the Florida heat. The discovery hit Clearwater like a hurricane. News vans parked along the street, neighbors whispered behind curtains, and the Callahan kids were sent to live with relatives. James tried to hold it together, but his poker face cracked. When detectives showed him photos from the scene, he broke down completely. The confession poured out in bursts, half anger, half grief. He said it wasn't planned, that she'd driven him crazy with lies, that he just wanted the truth. But the courtroom didn't care about his reasons. During the trial, prosecutors painted James as a jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle being deceived. The jury didn't need long. Life in prison, no parole. The so-called Florida dad was now inmate number 45792. Reporters followed every detail, calling it the marriage built on secrets. But even after the verdict, one thing didn't sit right. Security footage from a nearby street the night of Heather's death showed a black SUV parked near the Callahan home. Same one seen outside Heather's gym days before she vanished. The plates were fake, the driver never found. Some detectives believed Heather had been marked long before James ever snapped. Maybe she'd been silenced to keep her from talking. Maybe James just played the part of the perfect fall guy. Now, years later, that old house still stands quiet under the Florida sun. New families move in, never staying long. Locals say when the storms roll in, you can hear the faint echo of thunder, and something else, too. A whisper, soft and cold, that never really left.